Is Laurel Canyon something you're familiar with? Representing the spirit of rock and roll in a carefree community where artists work together to produce enduring music, this legendary location is steeped in the history of great performers from the 60s and 70s. There were a lot of great musicians that called this place home, but alas, the scene has died off. Laurel Canyon was home to a renowned rock and roll society. Join us as we investigate its demise. Laurel Canyon has long been a haven for artists, performers, and singers, tucked away in the picturesque Hollywood Hills. Iconic people like Jim Morrison, Joni Mitchell, and several members of the Byrds and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young lived in this close-knit neighborhood throughout the exciting 60s and 70s. The free-spirited energy that pervades the canyon's meandering lanes is a reverberation of their inventiveness. This cultural treasure in Los Angeles is more than just another enclave. Its residents cherish its relaxed, creative feel and have worked to preserve its rich tapestry of history. A mesmerizing aspect of Laurel Canyon is the seamless integration of city life with the serenity of nature. Just minutes from the bustle of the city, residents may discover peace in this wooded, isolated location characterized by majestic trees and abundant animals. A feeling of seclusion is created by the winding roads that resemble secret passageways. Nonetheless, the vibrant energy of Studio City and the Sunset Strip is within easy driving distance. Hiking paths, especially at the world-famous Runyon Canyon, are almost in the backyard of people who love the outdoors. Popular among visitors, this location captures the enchantment of this creative sanctuary with its stunning panoramic views of the expansive metropolis and the faraway shimmer of the Pacific Ocean. Studio City and Sherman Oaks, with their picturesque streets and peaceful suburban vibe that is a lovely contrast to the metropolitan bustle, are just a short drive over the hill. Not far distant, however, is the enticing West Side, with its glitzy Beverly Hills neighborhoods and Santa Monica's sun-kissed beaches. Even though it has a long and interesting past, Laurel Canyon is still a peaceful and charming town. In sharp contrast to the expansive urban backdrop of Greater Los Angeles, this picturesque enclave promotes a close-knit local atmosphere. A wide variety of architectural styles are represented in the residences of the residents, who take great interest in them. These styles range from comfortable rustic huts buried in the hills to sleek mid-century modern structures. The small, twisting streets make people feel even closer to their neighbors. As a traditional meeting spot where friendly faces and familiar smiles converge, the Canyon Country Store is at the center of community life and helps to define this extraordinary area with its warm and welcome atmosphere. Laurel Canyon has a rich history and has always been a haven for artists, poets, and dreamers because to its uplifting vibe and illuminating history. One thing that makes this neighborhood stand out is the unusual construction of the houses there. Many of them seem like little cottages on wheels. The area's allure is amplified by the residents' pride in their close-knit ties, which cultivate a feeling of belonging. Anyone looking for a one-of-a-kind place to call home will find Laurel Canyon to be a very desirable location. First, let's take a look at the fascinating history of Laurel Canyon to see how it has evolved into the beautiful spot it is now. Only then can we get into the thoughts of famous musicians who have discovered peace and inspiration here. As the new century began, Laurel Canyon was still a peaceful and mostly undeveloped valley, unaffected by the fast changes happening in Hollywood and the neighboring valley. The arrival of people from the east, however, caused a tremendous change to this peaceful area and fueled massive growth. Before it was developed, Laurel Canyon was a secluded haven, with pristine streams that fed the farms at its foot and gave sheepherders verdant hillside pastures to graze their livestock. Notable individual Charles F. Harper, who staked a claim to the canyon's entrance, was one of the first to hold an agricultural estate. Harper, a notable Civil War warrior, made his imprint on California through his hardware industry operations. He enjoyed a quiet life in Hollywood after retiring in 1885. Living out his golden years on his expansive 480-acre home in Laurel Canyon. The ambitious engineer and real estate magnate Charles Spencer Mann was the one who started the major change in the canyon. Along with his business associates, man began to transform the neighborhood by purchasing land in the hills and along Laurel Canyon Boulevard. Bungalow Land and Wonderland Park were the initial neighborhoods to arise from this massive undertaking. These neighborhoods were defined by low-priced lots, small streets, and a complex network of walkways and lanes that connected to one another. Similar to how the canyon has evolved through the years, the legacy of closely packed roadways has resulted in persistent problems with parking and emergency access. Around 15 minutes after the clock struck 15, the trackless trolley arrived to Bungalow Land, a major step forward in the region's transportation system. As early as 1994, Wonderland Park was using ads that piqued the interest of the neighborhood to promote itself. During this time, new tract deeds often included restricted covenants. In keeping with the racist views of the day, these provisions sometimes served as subtle attempts to restrict ownership to white men from a certain social class. Since the beginning of the Hollywood film industry's meteoric ascent in the 90s, Laurel Canyon has been a popular destination for the wealthy. Wally Reed, Harry Houdini, Bessie Love, Norman Carey, Richard Dix, Clara Bow, Tom Mix, and the dazzling photo players of the silent cinema period were drawn to this scenic canyon. The fact that Hollywood legend Errol Flynn lived in a magnificent home north of Houdini's residence further added to the area's charm. Laurel Canyon was formerly as posh as Bel Air, with magnificent mansions in the English Tudor and Spanish styles dotting the landscape and seemingly speaking volumes about the area's illustrious past. 6 famous silent cinema actors, Tom Mix, Bessie Love, Norman Carey, Wallace Reed, Ramon Navarro, and Lou Ayres, were among the first inhabitants. The silent cinema period may be a thing of the past, but the performers' tales linger on in the ways they touched our lives. Among those who defied societal expectations, Ramon Navarro stood out as Hollywood's first Hispanic actor. Laurel Canyon Boulevard, just outside the Canyon Store, was the site of his house invasion and murder in his 70s, just after he retired. The rich history of Laurel Canyon holds the imprint of Navarro and his fellow stars. Ayres, who was profoundly affected by his evocative performance in the moving film All Quiet on the Western Front, became one of the most vocal, conscientious objectors during What He Weighed II. His unwavering convictions almost destroyed his successful acting career, but he took a courageous stance when given the opportunity to reprise his legendary role as Dr. Kildare on television. There was a stalemate when the studio refused Ayres's demand that they not accept sponsorship from tobacco firms. Harry Houdini was already a famous and wealthy celebrity when he moved into his lavish mansion on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. Houdini was enticed to California by the growing Hollywood film business, but he regrettably did not spend much time in his extravagant estate before his untimely death. Bess, his faithful wife, stayed at the estate and lived in the guest house. In an effort to establish contact with her late spouse in the afterlife, she converted the lavish estate into a site for mystical seances. The canyon's topography revealed a different narrative when the wealthy began building mansions along Laurel Canyon Boulevard and the peak of Appian Way in Hollywood. The majority of the houses in its vicinity were far more subdued, more like homey huts than ornate mansions. Over time, these houses transformed from beloved weekend retreats into beloved main residences. The little town of Laurel Canyon had grown into a thriving hamlet by the 1920s, complete with a nice grocery store, a few restaurants that welcomed visitors, a lively local newspaper, and a picturesque one-room schoolhouse. And local jewel, Wonderland Park Avenue, was the site of a top-secret film studio constructed by the Army Air Corps in 1947. The studio grew into a nerve center, cranking out riveting documentaries and instructional videos for the military. One of the more eye-catching pieces was a series that showcased the above-ground nuclear testing that Nevada conducted at that time. But in 1969, after 20 years of operation, the studio was turned off. Its historical importance was preserved when the Laurel Canyon Association fought tirelessly to prevent its conversion to a commercial use. With the conclusion of W2 came a new era of growth in the area. Spurred on by businesses like aerospace and steel manufacturing, as well as a migration of people to the Sun Belt. Modern architectural styles were prevalent at this time, and lots that were considered unbuildable were often transformed into homes. As a groundbreaking departure from conventional house design, some of these avant-garde structures clung to steep slopes on stilts. Laurel Canyon is home to several stunning case study houses that were commissioned by Arts and Architecture magazine during this revolutionary age. These homes are a constant reminder of the audacious style that was popular at the time. Frank Zappa's leased cottage at Lookout Mountain and Laurel Canyon Boulevard was the epicenter of Laurel Canyon's wacky rock scene, and the area itself served as a physical hub for the psychedelic rock movement that was influenced by the blues. John Mayall, the renowned GTO, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Love, Janis Joplin, James Taylor, Mick Jagger, Marianne Faithfull, Jeff Beck, and countless others were among the guests at the Lower Cabin, which was formerly owned by silent film star Tom Mix, and the Upper Treehouse, which was designed in the 1920s by renowned architect Robert Byrd. Laurel Canyon has been steadily becoming gentrified since the 1980s, and it has transformed significantly since then. New inhabitants are buying up modest houses that are full of history and charm, and they can't wait to put their own modern spin on them. Children from a new wave of families who have settled here fill the air with energy as they play at the cherished Wonderland School, a landmark in our neighborhood. Laurel Canyon has a special way of life that is becoming more valuable in the face of massive changes, and a committed community organization is fighting tooth and nail to preserve it. Typical in many parts of Southern California, home values have risen sharply. As a result, there is mounting pressure to tear down the picturesque older homes and build on the many empty, underused lots that dot the neighborhood. Larger and more impersonal houses are becoming the norm, and they are encroaching on the beautiful landscapes around us. Still, we're at a turning point. This is the future we can either accept or make our own. Given that the Tongva people and their predecessors protected it for an incredible 40,000 years, surely we can find the strength to do the same for the sake of future generations. In this episode, we'll investigate why artists visit the canyon. Calmness reigned, a sight to behold. A twisting and steep road it was. Despite being in the middle of a major metropolis, it seemed like you were living in the country, reminisced Byrds member Roger McGuinn. Coyotes howl into the night, owls chirp quietly, and the sound of acoustic guitars fills the air as night falls in Laurel Canyon, transforming the environment into a natural symphony that fosters creativity. Mystical, even. You could be down on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood literally within 4 or 5 minutes, David Crosby remarked, expressing the canyon's irresistible charm. Laurel Canyon was a haven for artists seeking peace and inspiration due to its charming surroundings and surprisingly low prices. You weren't flush with cash when you decided to relocate there. Because of its convenient location in the middle of town, you decided to make that area your permanent home. With a twinkle in his eye, Mark Volman reminisced about how cheap living was. It was an intimate community filled with free-spirited, long-haired oddballs and eclectic musicians, Mickey Dolenz continued, his face lighting up with a smile as he recalled those exciting times. Once Frank Zappa and a motley crew of birds and monkeys settled there, this one-of-a-kind enclave started to take form. The publication of the Byrds' explosive cover of Mr. Sunshine by Bob Dylan caused the scene to explode. It was in 1965 when Tambourine Man first appeared, drawing in musicians from all over the world who were excited to be a part of the new folk rock movement. When I first heard that music, it sparked something deep within me, compelling me to head to California and form a band, said Richie Furay of Buffalo Springfield, his voice overflowing with passion and enthusiasm. The band Buffalo Springfield came to be as a result of a fortunate meeting between 2 Texas musicians, Stephen Stills and Richie Furay, and 2 Canadians, Neil Young and Bruce Palmer, who were riding in a classic Pontiac hearse along Sunset Boulevard. A creative movement would quickly gain a lively critical mass, all because of this chance meeting. The spirit of this growing artistic community was encapsulated by David Crosby, who recalled, "Once you got above 30 of us living up there, It was a kind of community. The young musicians' camaraderie flourished in the picturesque hills of Laurel Canyon, not far from legendary venues like the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Troubadour. Not only did they play in these little clubs, but they also met other musicians, took in the ambiance, and exchanged ideas. Daytime encounters at the charming Laurel Canyon Country Store were common for the musicians, who would regularly meet there to share coffee and stories. Following thrilling performances, they would seek refuge in the lively Ben Frank's restaurant, where the scent of coffee and fries wafted through the air, and the sounds of other customers blended with the laid-back atmosphere of the area. Richie Furay remembered a memorable evening, saying, "We were playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go and ended up being on a double bill with the Doors and Love." Such experiences captured the vibrant energy of that time, when inventiveness and teamwork flourished in the center of the city. I played guitar and sang at the legendary Troubadour's open mic sessions on a regular basis. The experience was thrilling and full of friendship as we waited for our turn to sing, frequently huddling on the pavement for hours with other composers. According to Jackson Browne, the experiences led to lifelong friendships that would have an impact beyond music. I remember my first days navigating the winding roads of the canyon, the sun filtering through the trees as I cruised with my favorite songs blasting from the stereo. It was when sidewalks were merely an afterthought, and neat lines were non-existent. Doors remain unlocked, a testament to the trust that flowed through the community, she said. Standing proudly away from conventional conventions and expectations, Laurel Canyon has an irresistible appeal. Its inhabitants, known for their free-flowing long hair, frequently adopted non-traditional ways of living. They drifted from one love affair to another while keeping hours that were more in sync with the moon than the sun, enjoying the muted high of marijuana. An eclectic tapestry of counterculture, this enclave was a veritable flash of energy and originality. In the heart of the Laurel Canyon scene, we found ourselves enveloped in a beautiful bubble, a tapestry woven with threads of creativity, friendship, passion, and the intoxicating allure of music and substances, said Crosby, Stills, and Graham Nash. However, Laurel Canyon's enchantment did not stop with artists and musicians. Aspiring business people looking to harness eclectic energy and find the next big thing also flocked to it. The canyon was more than a physical location. It was a phenomenon, a backdrop for hopes and ambitions. It was my quest for personal growth that brought me to this place. I used to take advantage of free magazines and sort through all the ads. One stood out to me. It said love, and the melody that emanated from it utterly enchanted me. My curiosity got the best of me, so I went backstage to pitch an idea. According to Jack Holtzman, the man behind Elektra Records, "We've never explored the world of rock and roll before, and you seem like the perfect place to start." Jack wrote these lines. Launching Asylum Records was a daring move by David Geffen and Elliot Roberts in 1971's thriving music industry. Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, Joni Mitchell, and Glenn Frey were among the top artists signed that first year. Elliot Roberts and I were discovering a wealth of new artists who large record labels seemed to overlook, David Geffen said on that pivotal period. The environment was quite supportive in contrast to the competitive spirit of the sector, as Nurit Wild remembered. By using words like "go for it" and other similar expressions, artists supported and encouraged one another. "Pull out all the stops. Whatever you come up with next, I will be eager to hear it." People that are creative tend to be mysterious, reclusive, and very protective of their work. Laurel Canyon, with its thriving neighborhood, presented another image. Artists from all around the world came together in this creative center to interact, share experiences, and exchange ideas. Experienced musicians served as role models and guides for younger musicians. People would sit with Glenn Frey at the Troubadour, and he would suck up their wisdom as he remembers. With each inquiry, I had the opportunity to learn something new that would drive me closer to my goals. This cooperative mentality is borne out by the Eagles' development. Their career started when they were Linda Ronstadt's backing band. "Take It Easy" was their breakout single. It was a joint effort between Jackson Browne and Frey, who did an excellent job finishing the song. After the minor success of their second album, Desperado, Ronstadt stepped in to help bring attention back to the band by releasing her version of the title tune. This ensured that their brilliance would be acknowledged even in the face of a constantly evolving music environment. It was a remarkable era, teeming with ambitious musicians who rallied around one another to write the greatest songs and make the most iconic recordings ever. With his early success under his belt, Jackson Browne became an inspiration to us all and a role model for how to get there. Don Henley spoke on how his band admired him and wished they could have his poetic depth and ability to express complex ideas. But behind the surface, there was a certain amount of instability inside this young creative center. Both individually and collectively, we were unable to achieve the level of achievement we had hoped for. Even when you succeed, it's not easy to live up to your expectations. Reminiscing on his departure from Buffalo Springfield, Neil Young remarked that the task becomes even more intense when he is sharing that experience with 4 other band members. It is common for one chapter to close and another to begin. David Crosby took advantage of the chance to co-found the legendary ensemble Crosby, Stills and Nash in 1967 after being abruptly fired from the Byrds. A year after leaving Buffalo Springfield, Neil Young found a creative home with Crosby, Stills and Nash, and he had the opportunity to start a successful solo career. After reuniting with Graham Parsons, the Byrds reignited their status as an innovative country rock band. Their music was revitalized, and the scene was prepared for the Flying Burrito Brothers to emerge as a result of this shift. And the seasons go round and round, Joni Mitchell sang with such poignancy, encapsulating the cyclical aspect of existence. The painted horses may be seen jumping up and down. We're ensnared in the endless loop of time. We are stuck here. All we can do is keep going in this never-ending circular game by looking back at where we came from. If you hold sand too tightly in your hand, it will run through your fingers. Joni wrote this painful message in a telegram she sent to Graham Nash in 1970, marking the end of their relationship. John Phillips and I chose to depart from Laurel Canyon and relocate to the opulence of Bel Air, where a collection of 3 Rolls-Royces was waiting for us in the garage, Michelle Phillips remembered sharing. Even though we started off as hippies, we had definitely become wealthy hippies. Our pioneering spirit had thrived, but we had unwittingly integrated into the system. Laurel Canyon's thriving music scene from the mid-1960s to the early 1970s created an incredible variety of sounds that had a lasting impact on the development of rock music in the United States. Despite a series of critically acclaimed musical hits, the carefree rock and roll period that had been so beloved by many faded away. In what ways may this decrease have occurred? Keep watching as we delve into the causes of this change. Laurel Canyon, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, was the site of a creative explosion in the 1960s that gave rise to some of the most memorable songs of the time and had a significant impact on the lives of the most remarkable rock and roll musicians of all time. An enchanting air permeates the area as Love's Johnny Eccles recalls the days when the place was known as Oz. Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas croons, "It's like Little Rabbit Runs," when asked to describe the meandering roads that traverse the gorgeous Hollywood Hills. Everyone was really approachable. Walking down the street can lead you to someone's house where you might hear the tinkling of a piano or the strumming of a guitar. Creativity seemed to pop out of every crevice in the delightfully social setting. Allison Elwood's 2-part documentary Laurel Canyon takes viewers on a journey via the reminiscences of the musicians who made it through the tragedy as they reminisce about the extraordinary era and the people who lived there. The documentary is competing for an Emmy for Outstanding Documentary or Nonfiction Special. In addition to the irresistible music environment, Elwood points out that the charming setting of Laurel Canyon was a major draw for many budding recording artists. It was cheap when it was new, but that's definitely not the case now, Elwood muses, his head cocked. Its ideal setting was within walking distance of the several exciting nightclubs where they played nightly. Being a resident there was like escaping to the country for a while. Once upon a time, Michelle Phillips lived on Lookout Mountain Avenue, a street ripe with inspiration. She lived close by her bandmate Cass Elliot, who had become a thriving social hub by inviting everyone she met with an open heart. As Phillips chuckles, he remembers how people would drop by with champagne and maybe some plants. As they worked on their next record, they would spend hours together, jamming and harmonizing. Cass was instrumental in bringing together David Crosby, Stills, and Nash. She also had a unique relationship with Crosby. "You all ought to sing together," she'd tell them to boost their morale. "You two sound so great together." When the great Bob Dylan's Tambourine Man, a folk rock song by the Byrds, was released in 1965, the Laurel Canyon environment burst into flames of creation. As Phillips remembers it, all of a sudden every label was on the hunt for that fresh sound that these folk musicians were crafting, highlighting the dramatic change in the way music was perceived. People were going crazy for it, and it was selling out. People were enthralled by what was happening in Southern California as they witnessed the remarkable success of the movement, as Elwood points out. Many escaped the icy winters of the East Coast to discover the warmth and vivacity of Los Angeles, where the record industry was booming. The documentary has Nash reflecting on their time in Laurel Canyon, saying, "We found ourselves enveloped in a vibrant bubble teeming with creativity, companionship, sunlight, and the hedonistic delights of love, substances, and music." At the end of the 60s, though, two major tragedies, the slashing Manson murders and the upheaval that broke out at the Altamont concert in Northern California, where the Rolling Stones were the headline act, were threatening to puncture this brilliant bubble. The utopian picture of the hippie peace and love movement was destroyed by these occurrences, as Elwood notes. People started to dread hippies out of the blue, as Alice Cooper memorably noted. What kind of damage have drugs caused to these children? They were perplexed. While the era seemed idyllic on the outside, it was shrouded in darkness due to its close association with the civil rights movement and the lingering effects of the Vietnam War. The shocking findings at Manson and Altamont had a significant impact on the musicians of that era, revealing the brutal truths hidden behind their idyllic bubble. As the 1970s came to a close, the once thriving Laurel Canyon music scene faded from prominence as a center for creative innovation. These moments of creativity never last indefinitely, Elwood thinks, and if they did, they wouldn't be as remarkable. The documentary explores several circumstances that led to the demise of this extraordinary age. A dramatic transformation occurred in the environment as the substances shifted from substances, the filmmaker says. Plus, the musicians started making a ton of money, so they stopped playing at little places where they used to support one another. The scene's once defining friendship was severed as they now performed in enormous venues. The Phillipses' move from Laurel Canyon's heart to a Bel Air mansion was a big change for Michelle and John. Phillips remembers laughing at the irony, "Life transformed for us with a regular stream of money. We integrated into the establishment quite fast. It was great to be a hippie, but it was even better to be a wealthy hippie." Phillips says it like it is. She doesn't miss Laurel Canyon. "Oh, my heavens, no!" With an air of relief in her voice, she exclaims, "I prefer Bel Air. That was a glorious time," and the documentary does a wonderful job of capturing the vibrant canyon music scene of the time. But getting those famous songs' permissions was a major challenge. "It's really tough, but we got through it, which is great," Elwood says with genuine excitement. "We were fortunate to have a music supervisor who was truly extraordinary and could perform miracles for our team." An unforgettable scene in the film takes place during the recording of California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas. The song was written by Michelle and John Phillips when they were living in New York City on the move. In the documentary, Michelle tells the fascinating narrative of how the song came to be, including personal details in an interview with Deadline. "John, supercharged by amphetamines, exploded into my life when I was fast asleep. This is a wake-up call. I'm writing this song," he exclaimed with eagerness. I said, "That's lovely, John," in response to the eerie tune he played as we sang the first stanza, but his excitement was contagious. "Wake up and assist me in writing it," he pleaded. His response was, "No, Michelle. I had offered to assist him write it tomorrow. Rise and shine. Present it to me now, please. In the long run, you will be grateful to him for this. May he be blessed for that epiphanic moment." In Laurel Canyon, there were countless performers, and the harmony between the mamas and the papas was enchanting. Phillips says, her voice quivering with emotion, "We were incredibly fortunate. Everything in terms of location, timing, and imagination came together flawlessly. While making our first 2 albums, we were fortunate enough to reside in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, where the perfect producer, musicians, and songs all came together in a dynamic environment. For many musicians, it seemed as if the stars had aligned, and they could feel the perfect harmony. Laurel Canyon has become a sentimental remnant of its legendary past as the once thriving freewheeling rock and roll society has progressively disappeared. It stands as a monument to the illustrious past of a time that left an indelible mark on popular music and popular culture, connecting with the spirit of defiance and innovation that pervaded that period. The Canyon, what are your thoughts on it? Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and press the like button. See what else is on your screen for more thrilling videos before you go.